Hey there, this is me, Malorian, and this is going to be another video, but this time talking about Caster Draft. Now, Caster Draft is one of the tournament versions that Privateer Press puts out, and to be honest, when it first came out, I was like, sure, why not? To me, if I wanted to try some crazy caster, why did I not just do Who's the Boss or something, where you're getting a random caster to use? So it just seemed like it wasn't something I was really interested in. The big thing that really changed and made it so that I wanted to learn more about it was that I had a friend that went to a different country where they played Caster Draft a lot, and he was like, man, you gotta try this. This is a lot of fun, very interesting, and we decided we're gonna do it. So our club we went and we ordered 5 decks of it, and we're gonna be running it at the next big event that we have here, where the evening event is going to be Caster Draft. So actually we just tested up there right now. I just went and we did a little 4-person Caster Draft just to kind of make sure that we fully understand all the ins and outs and figure out some tricks and tips. And that's really what I want to make sure you know from this video. I want to make sure you know where to find the information. I want to make sure you know the rules. I want to make sure you know basically some the way that you want to be trying to develop your strategy, and then last, just some simple tricks and tips that we picked up while doing this. So let's start this off by saying, well, Caster Draft, where do I even find this information? Where do I even get this? And it's actually really simple. To get the rules, you just go to the Privateer Press website, go to Organized Play, and it's right there under Caster Draft. Just along where you might find, say, like Steamroller or Iron Gauntlet. The big thing, though, is that this is actually very simple. Whereas with those other ones, there'll be pages and pages of rules. For this one here, it's like one page that's not even a separate document. You just read it right there on the website, and that's really it, ready to go. So I'm going to be covering those rules now and kind of showing you some different things, but that's where you actually find the information. So here are the rules. This is how Caster Draft works. And if it wasn't really evident, because I guess I didn't really say it, the whole premise of what you're doing in this format is creating your own caster. So you're going to come into this with a kind of a casterless list. You're going to create one and then put it into the list, and bam, there you go, you're ready to play. So what you need to do coming into a Caster Draft is you have to build a 50-point list, and with that you're going to be having 30 Warjacked or Warbeast points. So it's a little bit smaller than normal, and I think the real idea behind that is you're going to be losing some time at the event doing the drafting, and as well, I mean, this is supposed to be kept a little bit more fun and stuff like that. It's probably going to be more of a late night event or something like this where you don't want the games to be taking as long, so it's a little bit smaller. Now, once you have that 150-point list and you go and bring that, you're really kind of good to go. Some of the other things that you want to keep in mind is that Warcaster or Warlock you're taking can go in any theme. So you don't have to worry like, oh, well, is it going to be Leolise or anything like this. It's just whatever theme you want to use for this, go ahead. And if that theme gives you free points for taking infantry or something, sure, whatever, you get that free solo or whatever it is. Those things still apply. Some of the other interesting nuances is, say, like for mercenaries, you are allowed to be taking the Arc node, the Renegade, no matter what you're doing. Or you're allowed to take Rulik even though you're not going to have a Rulik caster. Or you can be taking the Cephalix Monstrosities even though you won't really be Cephalix. So those ways, those kind of work. The other big one is that if you're Grimkin, you're not going to be having any Arcana. You're going to be having what you get as your feat in the actual thing. And there you go. You're going to have your list. You're going to go there, probably at the start of the event. Everyone's kind of peeking around, seeing what everybody else has. And now it's time to do the draft. Now, what you get from this, and by the way, where you get this deck is actually not from Privateer Press. On that site, Privateer Press's own website where they have the Organized Play, there's a link to a third party who actually produces this. I don't know if Privateer Press is going to make their own in the future, but as it is right now, there's a third party you have to go through, and it's really simple. As I said, we ordered 5 decks, and it's took hardly hardly any time at all to get here, and they're really good quality. But the main thing you should know when you are going to be getting these decks is that you need to have one deck for every 4 people in the tournament. And the reason for that is because it's going to be coming with 4 kind of blank caster cards that you can kind of build around, and then you're going to be getting enough cards for 4 people to be doing their draft. So that means that if you're going to be doing a 16-person event, well, simple math means you need to have at least 4 decks. So do know that you're not going to just be getting one deck and then 12 people can play. You're going to need to get multiples of these. So I guess starting off with, just to know what your base Warcaster is here, is that they're going to have a base stat line. You know, they have pretty much 6s across the board for most of the stats there, other than defense and armor, which are your average 15 each. Command of 8, if that was ever to come up. These are always going to be on a 30 mil base, so it's always going to be a small base caster. And then you actually come automatically with 6 focus or fury. Again, it works both ways. And you have 2 crappy weapons. You have a pistol that's range 8, POW 12, so and then you also have a sword that's only a ½ inch and POW 9, so kind of crappy. But that's because you're about to upgrade it. Meanwhile, you automatically are going to be getting at least 1 spell. You get Arcane Bolt, and in that one there, it's, you know, the range 2 or cost 2, range 12, POW 11, blah blah blah, kind of like your basic spell. You also get 1 feat automatically as well, and this is going to be one where all your friendly faction models in your control range get +3 armor. So not a bad one to have there. I mean, compared to ones like Striker, it's just straight up worse because you're not adding 5, but you get some basic things there. Now, the cards you actually have here in this deck, there's a couple of different ones. There could be stat cards where they're going to be adding just straight stats. So this is where you start, and then you get better from there. So, for example, this one right here gives you +2 rat. And you can take as many of these as you want. If you get 2 cards that add to rat, well, guess what? You have just that much higher rat right now. So that's a good way of boosting up your caster. Another one you're going to be having is abilities. Again, you have so many different abilities. This one here is Sacred Ward, and the more you take, the more abilities you have. There's no real limit there. Then you have spells. So there's a bunch of different spells in here. And these are all just ones that are normally in the game already. You know, like this one here is Stranglehold. And again, there's no limit to the number of spells. Of course, if you think about it, the more spells you take, you're only going to have so much focus to spend. So there's kind of a line where it's like, oh, it's not really helping you anymore. So do kind of keep that in mind there. The last type of one in here is, of course, the feats. Now, no, there's actual weapons too, but the next type of one is feats. And the big thing is, well, we said that you start with a feat on your card. Well, the thing is that you can pick up to 1 feat to come in and replace this one. So you can't take like multiples. You can't be taking one, and if you get another one later, like, ooh, that's better. Once you replace this one on the card, that's it. Slot is full. You have your feat. That's it. So there is kind of things where like, should I take this feat now because it's pretty good, or should I wait for a better one? You know, that's really going to be part of the drafting process, which I'll get to in just a second. And then, like I said, the last thing that I didn't mention is the weapons. There are guns, there are melee weapons, and the way these work is that, again, you started with 2 weapons, a crappy pistol and a crappy sword, and then as you draw these, they replace one of those. So you can actually end up with 2 guns or 2 swords or whatever, or you can have the mix. You know, you could take, okay, I'm going to be getting a good gun and I'm going to replace my sword here. I want to do like a crappy pistol and a good shot or whatever. And there's some pretty crazy ones in here. There's Lola, there's Foe Cleaver X, all the really cool weapons that you see some of the casters have, those are in here. And so you can make some pretty crazy casters with some pretty crazy spells, abilities, and all the rest of the different options that are out there. So that's what you're getting here in this deck. Now, the last thing I should show about these here is the fact that on the bottom there is a number. So there's going to be 10 with number 1, 10 with number 2, all the way up to where you have 10 cards that say number 8. You're going to take these piles, you're going to place them down, and then each one of the players are going to take 2 of those piles. So every player is going to have 2 piles of 10 cards. When you start, you and your pod of 4 people, and again, there could be multiple pods going around you, are going to pick up 1 to start, 1 of those decks, piles. You're going to look through them, try and decide which one you want to take that 1 card, and then you're going to be passing around clockwise. So pass it to the person on your left. When that happens, the person to your right will be giving you their cards. You take those ones now, pick the one that you want to keep, pass on. You're going to repeat doing this until you have 6 cards that you've taken out. Then all those remaining 4 are going to go away. They're done. Now you're going to grab that second pile of 10 and do the same thing again. So basically, from the first set, you're going to have 6 cards you're going to be keeping. From the second set, another 6. Put those together, and you're going to basically take this basic build for your caster, add 12 cards on top of it, and there you go. There's your caster. And you can imagine that the possibilities are massive. So many different things you could do, so many different combinations, so many different strategies you could go for. And then past that, you just kind of play the event, right? Like I said, there's just one scenario, and you just kind of play until you have one winner or however number of rounds you want to do. You're just good to go. So with that in mind, then, one of the things I want to talk about is just some of the strategies you might want to think about as you do this. And so I think one of the first ones when I saw this, and I was thinking that this might be one you want to lean towards, is that since you know guaranteed you're going to be getting an armor feat, you can lean on that one there and say, well, you know, how about I lean towards armor? Because that's a skew I know I can have, and normally what that means is lots of jacks or beasts that have higher armor than your regular troops. And it can get up big. I mean, when one of mine here, I mean, there's that feat. I had Batten, I had Roots of the whatever, the circle spell that adds even more armor. You know, here I am with like an armor 28 driller. It was crazy. And so some of these combos can be extremely powerful. So it's really important that you try and start thinking about like, ooh, you're like, this is kind of like a force multiplier card, but if I have this and this, oh, that's really good. So you got to really start thinking as you go through. And what some people found, I mean, you could be halfway through drawing your cards, and then you realize, oh, wow, actually, this is amazing. I might want to start seeing where I'm going to be going with this. But the very interesting thing is that it really is a gamble, because as you're passing those cards around, you don't know which ones will be passed on to you. You might be trying to go for something like an armor skew, and then nobody's ever passing you any armor cards. Everybody else is taking them. So those things really will be a risk. So maybe then a different strategy you might want to go with is just making sure you have a balanced list. If you have a balanced list, well, that makes sure that no matter what you get, you can find something useful for your side. I mean, you can also just go for a skew. You can be like, I'm taking all the guns or all the dudes, or I want to try and find something that's going to be hitting as hard as possible, and I'm going to be taking all these cards. Another strategy that somebody tried out is, what if I take units or battle engines that are all self-sufficient? So I don't really need any spells that help them, and then all I'm going to be taking is things that turn my caster into a killing machine. I mean, the one guy that I played in the first round today kicked my butt and just killed my caster on turn 2, and then we re-racked, and that time I was able to stay alive to turn 3. So especially when you're doing this, you can see some pretty crazy things being put together. Now, I had mentioned before that you probably want to look around and see what everybody's lists are before you start drawing, because if you start seeing that somebody's already taking the models for a defense skew, you might want to make sure they don't get Defender's Ward, right? Like stuff like that. You might want to start realizing like, ooh, I don't want to pass this way, so I'm going to take this card just to make sure they don't have it. Again, you got to make sure that you're keeping yourself good enough that it's worth it, but this is this type of strategies that go in this type of thing where you're creating this interesting, unique caster that will probably never exist, and at the same time trying to think about like, okay, well, these are the people who are playing today, these are the things I need to deal with, I do not want to pass you this card, and that just brings up such an interesting dynamic, and just for some very memorable games. Now, some other tips and tricks that we kind of picked up while playing these is that, first of all, one of the ones that was passed on to me is you probably want to have something to organize these cards, because if you just end up with like 12 cards plus your base one and you're just kind of like, this is my caster, it gets really awkward. And so what the suggestion was just to kind of use some card sleeves. You know, the ones where you might keep your hockey cards in, where it's like a page that holds 9 cards? There, on that sheet, that's my caster. And it works out really well. You can even make it two-sided by putting them one facing one way, one facing the other, because for the most part, there's just one side of the card that actually really matters. Another thing that we tried is we had a printed off sheet that one of the guys made, and then right on there, especially for the stat increases, you can just say, like, right there, write in what the stats are after all the increases, and then it's a lot more straightforward. So that really, really helps in the way that you're going to be trying to just manage and try and keep in your face and remember all the things you have. You know, I got done my first game, and it wasn't until after I realized, like, oh yeah, I had Gallows, right? Like, your caster is so different and so new, it's going to take a while just for you to figure out what your caster actually does and remember all of your options. And I think that's a really big thing as well. It's kind of like a tip going in, is that whereas you might go into a regular game and you want to kind of refresh yourself of what's your caster's feats and blah, 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 you have to realize that when Privateer Press makes their casters, they make sure to balance them. These people are going out of their way to make the most broken combos they can, so it's really important that you say, like, can I just see everything? Just pass over your sheets, and I want to know what every ability, every spell, every upgrade you took, because if you don't, you can get caught off guard really quick. I mean, like I said, that's exactly what happened in my game, where this thing turned out to be like speed 8, charged in with a crazy weapon master weapon, hit me with mortality for free after killing some like trooper model, and yeah, my caster just died like nothing. So it's really important you realize all the little things that are there, and even just stuff like that, like, oh, you're speed 8, not speed 6. That stuff can really catch you off guard. So really make sure you prepare yourself and look through the upgrades and what they actually did with their caster. And then with that though, I think another thing you want to keep in mind is just have fun. You know, there's some formats out there that are like, this is serious, we're going to do this, there's lots of things on the line. I really feel that you should look at this format as just, this is a for fun format. You can go into it and you can do your best to make the best list going into it that works to some strategy. You can go through your draft process and do your best to build the best, most broken caster you can. But at the end of the day, you have to realize that, like I just said, this version won't be as balanced as a regular game, and crazy stuff is going to happen. You can do your best, and you're just you're up against such a crazy combination that click, click, boom, you're dead. So you have to go into this with just like an understanding that this is just a little bit silly, and you should have probably a little bit more fun as opposed to being a little bit more tough and serious. So that's really what I wanted to say. If you haven't tried Caster Draft, you really should give it a try. Again, the links for where to find on the Privateer Press site and where to order decks, if you're interested in that, I'll put those down below in the description. But yeah, if you're someone at home or who's watching this and you've played Caster Draft and you have some other tips or tricks or anything else that maybe I missed, please post it down below. Let's try and share that information around. And otherwise, we'll just catch you later. Bye.